All right. Okay, am I peaking? No. I turned my gain up, so hopefully the audio is a little bit better, or at least expected where it should be. Hey, Happy New Year and Merry Christmas, and welcome back to work, everybody. Ugh. Got to hit the ground running, I guess. I don't know. Nobody was really asking for this, but I guess for completeness, I should go ahead and do this. Is I never showed how to make these dice, so I'm going to very quickly kind of go over a couple different techniques you can use to get this effect. As I was doing it, I don't know that it was the greatest way to go about it. So if you guys have any suggestions, please shout it out in the comments, and everybody can learn, especially myself. John, hey everybody, thanks for stopping by. And we're going to start with the most difficult thing to do in ZBrush, which is make a cube. So a couple different ways to do that. So probably you have the simple brush selected, and this is just a brush palette. It's not actually a simple brush. Well, it is a simple brush, but we're going to ignore that. So here's your simple brush. We don't need that. Hit Control N to clear a canvas, and then we're going to click on this brush palette. And you got some primitives in here. So there's a cube. Obviously, you can drag it out, go into edit mode. If you go in here to make polyframe or Shift F to turn this on, you're going to see we have a initialize primitive. You are going to notice that if you go down here to initialize and you try to change the sides count, you can make it into a cylinder and a triangle if you'd like. But no amount of these is going to fix this polarized top. So a lot of different ways you can get around this. So number one, you can just go in here and you can say, okay, let's make a Polymesh 3D so we can actually sculpt on this. And I'm going to change my material to a Skin Shader 4 so we can see a little bit better. And you can literally just go in here to Geometry, Dynamesh, just hit Dynamesh to turn the blur down. Hit Dynamesh, and now you have a Dynamesh cube. If you undo that, you can also go down here to ZRemesher. And if I'm going to be doing this, I like to tap X to turn on X symmetry. So when I go in here and I say ZRemesher, go ahead and detect my edges. It's going to look at these nice sharp edges. We're going to take our adaptive size down to 0 so we get nice even cubes. And our target polygon count, we're just going to do, I don't know, half. And it's going to go through and analyze it. And now we have a nice cube with nice even geometry on all sides. Another way you can go about this is if you had anything, if you choose a Polymesh 3D star, and you don't have to hit make Polymesh 3D because it's already a Polymesh 3D. There's no initialize options down here. Well, actually there is. When you hit make Polymesh 3D with any object, and then you go down here, you see you have initialize, you have Q cube. You can hit that, and now you have Q cube. You can change the resolutions if you want to do like 5 tab, 5 tab, 5 tab, enter, Q cube. There you go. So you got another cube. One more way? Sure. Let's go in here to the, what is that? A gear icon, hit W to go into gizmo mode, hit the gear icon, and then in here there's a polycube, and I think that's what we want. Hit polycube. You can obviously tell I don't go in here very often, but you can hit polycube, and now we have a polycube, and then you've got these cones. You can go through here and you can modify these settings right here. So several different ways to make cubes, probably without a polarized top, I should say. So I don't know, a couple different ways to do that. So I can go back in here, and it gets a little confusing in here now because now we have Polymesh 3D cube, Polymesh 3D cube. Here's our original cube 3D. This is our initialized primitive cube. So if you do go in there, again, just make Polymesh 3D, ZRemesher half, depth size down to 0, detect edges, ZRemesh, and that's, I guess, how we're going to start here. Back to the comments here. Through December 28th, you can save 10% off a perpetual ZBrush license. Well, it's January 4th, so that probably isn't a thing anymore. Yeah, I couldn't. Something happens to my brain when I have to live stream. It's not like I'm doing any waking up and doing heart surgery or anything, but I was having a hard time staying asleep this morning. And I get up early. I'm just like, hey, just stop thinking about anything. My workflow sessions. I kind of do that. If you guys have any questions about, how to create something, I can. Unfortunately, I'm not able to give it a ton of thought, so it's more off the top of my head than well thought out ways to do things. But Your preference to move the panel of layers 3D to make it more practical, especially when you have 15-20 layers. I struggle with it. I'm looking for a solution. Yo, man, I wish I had a good answer for you. I don't use a ton of layers, honestly. I know they're super useful, and if I'm doing blend shapes, which is rare, I use them quite a bit. But yeah, when you're talking about having to juggle a bunch of layers, I don't juggle a bunch of layers. Is there might be a plugin for that, or you know, people write all sorts of plugins for ZBrush that allow you to have a little bit more flexibility with some of the UI, but layers, I'm not quite sure. I wish I had a better answer for you. Difference between using Snakehook brush and move brush when both are large enough size to move the object. And the other quick question, to use perspective view for a small project like this, I almost never turn on perspective. Even when I'm doing like faces and heads and stuff, I'll just leave perspective off. If I need to match a camera view, so for example, I go in here to texture import, I can bring in reference. If I needed to match, you know, a particular camera view, or I'm sorry, not camera view, like a, so if we, you know, import anything, just grab this texture here and then say, select it, add it to my spotlight and shrink it down a little bit. If I was doing a likeness and I needed to match my camera here, so we go in here to draw, what am I looking for? Draw focal length. So if I knew they took this with a certain focal length on their camera, I would change that and turn perspective on, and then I could, you know, match it up. That's just another thing too. If I go in here to Z plugin, ref switcher, so you can buy a ref switcher off Gumroad. This is another example when we were talking about people who write things for ZBrush. Ref switcher is one of those plugins where you can go through and you can save your views and you can name it. So here's my Squid Games here. So if I go in here and say load view, you can just drop the model. There we go. So now as I go through here, I can switch through this camera view, and you're going to see it has perspective turned on. And we just need our cube drawn out. There we go, into edit mode. So as we load these up, it's switching my camera view and my object to match my reference, and my perspective is turned on, and it is set to any particular focal length. So this one was set to 35 millimeters. So, and you can go through here and you can name them. So you can see I have Pizza Hut and skateboard in there. So this is a really cool plugin you can use. And that's the only time I'll ever use perspective, generally speaking. What ends up happening when I'm doing a very, like, it's a small project, but it's actually a small sized object. But even when I'm just doing heads or anatomy or anything like that, what can happen is I'm in here on the object really closely, and that automatically kind of distorts the object. So if I had perspective turned on and I'm working on a face, so let's go in here to comma key, and let's go grab just a head here. Let's go in here to the comma key, go into tool. I'm just looking for, that'll work. So if I'm working on a head here and I have perspective turned on, and, you know, and I'm trying to get some detail on the face. Well, if you're working on a miniature and you're going to see, here's a miniature I did just recently for my 3D printer. So if I'm working on, you know, a gorilla skull, for example, and I have perspective turned on and I'm trying to do details, you can see as soon as I get here, this is like me with a gorilla skull or a head an inch away from my eyeball, you know, which is probably not the optimal viewing distance that you're going to be seeing this thing. Probably it's going to be on your desk, maybe, you know, 2.5 feet away from your eyeball, in which case, you know, you'd be working on it like this. But if you want to get in here and work on detail, you know, it's going to distort it. So really, I'll have it off mostly, and then if I need to check it, I'll make sure I back out a little bit to the optimal viewing distance for my, whatever my focal length is, and then I'll turn it back on, and then I'll turn it off, and then go in and start working on it again. So, I don't know, long explanation for an easy question, but generally speaking, no, I don't have my perspective turned on. And as far as Snakehook brush here, so we go in here to move brush, and we're using move here, and then I go BSH for Snakehook. You can go through here and you can move it. However, Snakehook is actually a kind of a little bit cooler. I'm going to hit Control D a couple times to get some more geometry on here. So we go through here and kind of curve. You can see it'll kind of do that. However, I go back to the move brush and I go in here and curve. You're going to see it's just going to kind of, you know. they're both useful. Honest, there are people who use Snakehook. I'm just going to undo out of my subdivisions there. There are people who use Snakehook to do all their move operations because it's a little bit more, you get a little bit more out of it. You can kind of go, you know, like I said, you can kind of bend things around as opposed to just moving things. If you do go down to a draw size of 1, or no, a very large draw size, and you move around, and then you go back in here, BSH, and we say skip this note, they'll both basically move your entire object around, but and they can also, you know, the other thing too, I was going to say, well, also on the move brush, you also have auto masking in here. So you can say, you can mask by topological. So if I had 2 really close objects here, I just control drag out a copy, and I'm going through here, it'll move everything unless you turn on topological. And then you can go through here and you can move things separately, or you can go in here to mask by polygroups up to 100, and then it'll just move whatever polygroup you select first. But those are also available in Snakehook. In fact, this is global, so I do BSH for my Snakehook brush. Same thing, Snakehook's going to move these around. And yeah, so Snakehook kind of seems to kind of build up as well. So as I'm just kind of rotating in a circle, it's kind of twisting in a circle. If I go back to my move brush and rotate in a circle, it just rotates. It doesn't really have like a build-up effect. But same thing, BSH, topological, you can use your Snakehook with topological as well. So, but if you go in here to BM, you do have those set up for your moves. So move topological, move elastic, move, and of course in your comma key brush, we have LMNOP, move. You got some other move brushes, but really what these are just settings changed mostly in here, I think. Cool. Is there any way to get 2 dock panels next to each other on the side of the screen? Not to my knowledge. The only way to dock is you have this little double divider here. You just double click those. Same thing on this side, and same thing on the bottom, I believe. Yeah, so you can, I think you can put stuff down here too. But I don't think you can do like 1 and then 2, unless somebody's written a plugin for that. Yes, hey pre-drag. Happy New Year. And okay, so I'm gonna go back again. We just have we did our ZRemesh, I think, no, actually, you know what? I think it was this one. So we did our ZRemesh, and we have X symmetry turned on by typing X on our keyboard. And I'm gonna move this down so I don't have to see myself do this. There we go. So what we're gonna do, and again, we're making these dice, and you're gonna see these dice, they're a little bit rounded on the corners. They're kind of sharp here, but kind of rounded on the corners. So I'm going to do actually 2 versions of these dice faces here. And like I said before, when I was doing this, it didn't feel like it was the best way to go about it, but it is what it is, I suppose. The first thing I'm going to do is get rid of these creasing. So I'm going to go down here to geometry. Where am I looking at? Crease, dynamic, Dynamesh. Boy, am I rusty or what? Crease. Go in here to creasing, I'm going to say uncrease all. That's going to get rid of all of my creasing here. And in fact, just to make it a little bit less complicated, I'm going to hit Control W and make this all one polygroup here. So again, we're looking at our dice. If you want to turn on your floor, we can see, okay, we're on our floor, Z forward, that little blue line is forward. So we're looking at the front of our dice, whatever we decide that's going to be. Turn our floor off, so we're in good shape. Now, if I go through here and I hit Control D or I hit this divide a bunch of times with the smooth modifier, you're going to see we kind of get those melted corners, and that's about what I want. However, I want to keep these corners a little bit tighter. I don't want it to get that much of a fall off. Now, I could go in here and put in control loops, but what I think I did was go in here to geometry, go in here to dynamic, turn that on, and you can see it automatically gives me a preview of 2 smooth subdivisions. So if I do Shift D, turns it off, D, yes, turns it back on. What I can do is I can go in here and I can say, do smooth subdiv versus the crease level. So in this case, I do need my creasing back on. So if I do Shift D, you can see I took my creasing off. Oops. Here's one thing I could do. Here's probably the thing what I probably did, maybe, is I can go in here and I can turn off this SMT modifier, that's a smooth modifier, and I can divide once, turn it back on, divide it again. You're going to see it maintains that curve a little bit more. So as I keep dividing, it gives me a nice smooth curve. And if I go in here and I turn it off and undo, so if I go through here and I don't have any subdivisions anymore, and I say, okay, dynamic divide, smooth modifier turned off, divide twice, turn that back on, divide one more time, you're going to see, again, I get a nice corner fall off. So So I can do that dynamically as well, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I'm going to undo out of my subdivisions here, Shift D to turn off some dynamic. And how I can do that is I can put my creasing back on. So I'm just going to go down here and hit crease with a tolerance of 45. That's going to crease my edges again. And then I can go in here and I can say crease level of 3. Wait, sorry, I'm not using my custom menu here. So I'm going to turn on dynamic, smooth subdiv of 3, crease level of 2. And what that's going to tell ZBrush is hold those creases for 2 subdivisions and then subdivide one more time with the smooth modifier turned on. And that's essentially what it's doing. So if I go in here and smooth subdiv of 4, crease level of 2, it's going to hold those creases for 2 subdivisions, let it go for 2. Now if I go in here to subdivision crease level of 3, it'll hold it for 3. If I go down here to subdivision level of crease level of 1, it'll hold it for 1. And if I go down here to 0, it'll turn off my creasing completely. So I can kind of just dial in how that fall off of those corners I want. I think crease level of 2, smooth subdiv of 4 is what I was looking for. So I'm happy with this. I can go dynamic, apply. Now I have actual subdivisions here. And then we'll switch over to started material. And this is probably where I started. And this gives me nice even geometry, which probably isn't going to matter once I get into Dynamesh and stuff. But that's how I started my cube. Seems like a lot of explanation for starting a cube, but that's a couple of different ways to get those smooth fall off on the corners that you can control. Let me see. Dock 2 panel. Okay, Dock 2 panels we talked about, which I don't think I can do. What's the purpose of small open and closed circles next to some functions? It seems to behave differently for different functions. Yes, it does. One of those functions down here is under deformation. You have polish by feature. So if I turn on my polyframe, you're going to see that we have a feature can be a poly group or a creased edge. And in this case, we do have creased edges. And you can also have poly groups here. So if we go back to, I don't know, one of these cubes here. And in fact, we go in here, I'm just going to use my custom menu real quick. So go into your crease menu and say uncrease all. You're going to have a bunch of poly groups on here. So if I go through here, and I do, what would be the best way to show this off? You know what? Maybe not a cube. Let's go in here to a sphere, make polymesh 3D, Control Shift, go in here to slice curve, and I'm going to go through, I'm just going to slice through this object so we have a polygroup border. And if I go down here to polish by features, so I have a feature, and again, that's a polygroup border. If I go in here with the closed circle, you're going to see as I polish this, it's going to polish that border out a little bit, but it's not really going to change the shape of my objects. If I go in here and I use my move brush or Snakehook brush that we talked about earlier, I go through here and move this out, and then I do polish by features. Again, it's going to polish that border transition, but it's not going to change, you know, the volumes of my object. However, if I go in here to polish by features, open circle, and I move this, you're going to see it's going to polish that line and it's going to polish my entire object. I'm going to lose my volumes. So you can use this to your advantage. It's actually pretty useful, and you can even use, you know, masking, control drag, and then control tap, and then control tap to invert, and then again polish by features, just this section if you really wanted to polish an entire object and get a very specific type of look. That's where I most commonly switch between open and closed circles. And in fact, one thing what I'll do is if I really want to protect my volumes here, so here's my volumes and I just want to polish. In fact, let's do this. Let's make it even more obvious. Let's hold down Control Shift. Let's go in here to select lasso. I'm just going to grab these and hit Control W. So now we have polygroups, but it's like got those crazy aliased lines. Again, polish by features closed circle will polish this line. It doesn't really change the shape of our object. However, you know, if I do have specific details in my object and I go in here to polish by features, it is going to soften any details that you have. So if I just want to polish just that polygroup border, what I'll do is go down here to masking, turn off everything but groups, mask by features, just that polygroup border, control tap to invert that. And then when I go back here to polish by features, I can polish this out. However, you're going to see it kind of didn't really polish as much as I wanted to, so I can keep doing, polish by features, just keep tapping that. Or since I have everything else masked, this, I can go in here to polish by features, open circle, and then just tap, tap, and then it'll really polish the hell out of that border there and leave all my other details alone. So a couple different ways I'll go about using open circle, closed circle. I'm trying to think if there was anything else that I use a lot that has that. Those kind of follow that. If I see anything else, or if you remember anything that you were using Polish by Features, or if you were using open and closed circle, maybe ZRemesh, does it have one? Weld Points has one. I think that's a different algorithm to grab more things. Group by Normals has one. I think open circle is if you want to use group by normals on an object that is a little more dense and it's not just simple polygons, I think, or it's a little more relaxed. Or if you had a Dynamesh of a cylinder and you used open circle with group by normals, I think it would grab the surfaces better, I think, is what that one does in particular. Small open, yes. So we have a head and a body, how to merge the two without destroying everything and erasing the junction. Yeah, we've done that a couple times. Let me go to my YouTube. Oh, here we go. So YouTube channel, YouTube playlists. So there's a bunch of videos in here, as well as my ArtStation page here. My profile might be, here we go, a little bit easier on the eyes as far as like finding stuff. So the videos and other goodies are kind of in that area. So particularly, if we go down here to view the full playlist, again, I almost always, anytime I do a character, I usually work on the head and body separately and then merge them later. I want to say, let's turn this off here. We did it here. So we have a very specific head that we merged in. Did we merge it in with, yeah, we merged it in with like the kid's body we did for the live stream to make our little leprechaun guy. I think, did we? I'm trying to remember. Maybe we didn't. You know what? I think this, maybe this one. So yeah, we had the head. Boy, that head was looking rough. And then we were working on the body, and then we merged these all together to get basically, the long story short is you can put it into one subtool. You have a head, you have a body, merge them, subtool, merge into one subtool, and then you have your high-res information. Then you can duplicate that subtool off, or clone it off, however you want to do it. And then you can Dynamesh that to get an envelope, ZRemesh that geometry to get nice clean geometry everywhere, and you can get as fancy as you want with that. And then you're going to project your new geometry to your other details. You can either store that in history, or you can do project all with subtools visible, and then subdivide, project, and then you can just smooth out any necklines or wrist lines or whatever you're merging together. So I think I do it in this video. If you want to get, you can also, there's trickier ways to get around that. But as it gets a little bit tricky with subdivision, that's probably the most easy way for me to do it. That's probably the way I'm going to do it. Cool. Excellent. Glad the videos are helping. Seeing yourself using the new 2022 features constantly. Is there a point in upgrading for 2021 to 2022? I upgrade just because if they do bug fixes, at the very least, sometimes there's bugs that happen that they'll go through and fix bugs. I don't use a ton of 2022 features. I'm trying to think. I honestly don't remember what comes out every feature launch. They all kind of melt together after a while. So here's the 2022 what's new for anybody who's looking. I'll go ahead and link that here as well. I don't really do a whole lot of modeling lately, so if I was actually a modeler at work, I might say, yeah, I use this all the time. Knife rectangle I would probably use quite a bit. Dynamesh sampler I would probably use a little bit. And then what else would I use? Some of these things I might use if I was doing more creature stuff, like a fall off. Distribute objects. I could see myself using distribute objects quite a bit. Bas relief, I might use depending on if I'm doing something very specific. And then of course Bevel Pro. Yeah, why not? Why not upgrade? And if you're paying for it, you're gonna get the upgrade anyway. So competition with you and Eminem. Eminem would win. Cool. Yeah, for some of the open close circles, It is like there is kind of like a fine coarse adjustment like we were talking about. Another thing too is on these little sliders here, if you tap the slider, sometimes there's a little hidden slider up at the top that'll give you a little bit more fine-tuned control. It's a little bit hard to see. Asked a million times, by the way, thoughts about Maxon buying Pixelogic. Just curious. Totally excited. I feel old and grizzled. There was quite a bit when it was first announced, where everybody was like, ah! And I don't like feeling this way, where it's like I don't feel like I've been doing this for a long time, but I guess I have. Where I'm like, really, this is you guys have never. I mean, I guess you have experienced. You know, you have three options that's going to happen. It's either it's going to stay the same, it's going to get better, or it's going to get worse. Those are your three options. And two of those options is kind of what people were clamoring for. It's like, I don't want ZBrush to change. Well, there's a chance it's not going to change at all. There's also a chance it's going to get better, and there's like a chance it's going to get worse. So 2 of 3 ain't bad, and I'm assuming, I don't know. I've known the Pixelogic guys for quite a while, Pixelogic people, and they're not dummies, you know. There's a very small team, so if this is an opportunity for ZBrush to start implementing a lot of awesome stuff, that here's another thing too, is that when, you know, every release, if you go through the YouTube comments, it's like, oh, I really wish ZBrush would do this. Why doesn't ZBrush ever do this? You know, ZBrush is the best, or ZBrush is the worst because of blank. You know, this is an opportunity for some of those things to possibly be addressed. You never know. Or even more cool stuff. The reason why I like Pixelogic and I like ZBrush as opposed to, why can't ZBrush be more like Max, Maya, Moto, Blender, etc., is because if they were, I wouldn't need it. I wouldn't use it, because it would just be another of a long list of go into your file, open, go in here, make a thing, do a thing, drag a slider, type in a number, duplicate a thing. It feels like every other thing, and it feels like every other option. The thing I like about Pixelogic specifically is they're not like every other thing. So I can use every other thing. I do use every other thing. I use Max, Maya, Moto, Blender to do the same stuff, basically. ZBrush I use to create and have fun. It's a little bit more, I don't know. They think of things in terms of, while you're making this, is it kind of interesting and fun for the artist to use? And that's why I like to use it. I don't consider myself an artist necessarily, but as a hyped up craftsman, I prefer to use ZBrush just because they think outside the box a little bit, and they make things easier for me to use as a creator, as opposed to making things easier for, I don't know. You could make the argument that UX UI is difficult or too different, but I don't know. If I can do it, you guys can. Come on, give me a break. I am getting dumber by the minute, and I still manage to go through a bunch of different programs and figure it out. So I'm certain everyone else can too. And I'm not even using that often. So if you're using it a lot, it doesn't take too long. Let's see here. Anything else before we dive back into our subdivided dice, which we've gone through and we've hit apply. And again, I'm going to switch back over here to startup material, and I'm going to keep these links open just in case I need them. Then again, we're looking at these dice here, and I did import these already. So if I go in here to texture import, you just need to do just like we did for this image. We're going to select this image, click add to spotlight here. We don't need this one anymore, so we could exit out of here. Then this is what I use. You're also going to see we got some holes in here. Whenever your image goes to pure black, it turns transparent. If you want to get rid of that, just go in here to intensity, tap it, and then drag to the right just a little bit, and that'll make all your blacks dark gray. And then you have, oops. And then you have your dice here. So basically what I ended up doing, and this is another, okay, this is good. So this is an example of where I would go in here and turn on my perspective temporarily so that I could kind of match up these corners a little bit. And you're going to see these corners are actually a little blobbier than what I have here. So in this instance, I could go in here to Shift Z, go in here to Polyframe. I'm going to go in here to Crease, Uncrease All, and then maybe I will go down here to Deformation, Polish by Features, Open Circle, and just tap, tap, tap. So now, also make sure I don't have dynamic turned on. So now I'm getting kind of more of a rounded effect here. So if I hit Shift Z to turn this back on, you see I kind of matched those corners a little bit more. So now we have perspective turned on, we have these on here, and I have subdivisions on here. So I'm gonna go ahead and paint on here. So I'm gonna turn off X symmetry, tap X, go in here to my, let's do this, BPA to go into my paintbrush. And now I'm going to paint. RGB is turned on, Z add is turned off. So now I can literally, let's tap L to turn off our lazy mouse. I can go through here and I can paint this image onto the top of my object. I can't really see very well, so I'm gonna hit Shift Z, and you're gonna see, oh, it's not doing anything. So I forget, I need to go in here to my brush menu, samples, and turn on spotlight projection. So now when I go through here, I can paint this top one onto the top of my dice here. And let's go ahead and turn on Skin Shader 4. But you're gonna see the resolution isn't great. So honestly, this is probably enough for what I would need to get the shape on there, but I'm gonna hit Control D once and then Shift Z to turn this back on. And again, we're gonna kind of, oh, another thing too, if you tap Z, you can go in here to opacity and you can turn the opacity of this object down so you can kind of see if you're fitting appropriately, if you need to change your camera angle. I think it's close enough. And I apologize, we have cedar here in Texas that's really getting to me. Try and keep my clicking to a minimum. So yeah, so we got this rotated in here and we subdivided once, so now we're like 6 subdivisions. Now we can go through here. Oop. You can do standard brush, turn on RGB and turn off Z add as well. That's what I'll probably usually end up doing. And go through here and paint this on. We'll paint this one on. Sorry if my camera's moving. And then we'll paint this one on. I have my camera on a tripod arm now, so it's a little bit easier, but it's also not quite as rigid. So if I do Shift D, you're gonna see I've got this painted on 3 sides. So now it's just a matter of me going through my reference. Like you can see I have the 4 corner, here's the 6, here's the 2 on here. So I would go through my reference images and see if I can't see like, okay, the 6 is on the other side of the 1 here. So I can flip this around, Shift Z, and then we'll match this one up, and then we'll put the 6 on the back here. And I'm not really using this for texture purposes, although I suppose if you're really careful you could. I'm really using it just to kind of get these things on here. And I'm gonna go through and just really quickly, and on these ones I can maybe turn perspective off. Whatever kind of matches the corners, and just try to get. And if you wanted to be really careful, I think I'm missing one, there we go. You know, make sure which ones you're getting on the what side is correct based on your reference. And then also, if you wanted to like get rid of the warping in Photoshop before you did this to really get it perfectly on the dice, you could, but I didn't. So this is just me doing a quick layout. So now how do I bump these pieces out on the object here? So, and also what I can do is I can turn on X symmetry back on. So if I'm up here, I can turn X symmetry back on because these are vaguely symmetrical, and I can start there, although it's, you know, Tim Burton style, so it's kind of, it's not exactly symmetrical, so I don't know if I'd bother with that necessarily. But so I have this information on my object. So I could go in here with a white color. You see I have white color selected. I can go in here to drop my RGB intensity down on my brush and say color fill, and then I'll kind of knock that back so you can kind of just get an outline. If I undo that, you can also go in here to render, and there's a fade opacity. So you can fade the opacity of your Polypaint without actually affecting it. So the only problem is when I go in here to control mask, it'll also fade your opacity on your mask. Not that it actually fades your opacity. The mask is still as strong as it ever was. However, it's going to look like it's not that strong. So what I tend to do, even though I do have that option, is just go in here to color, fill object with a low RGB intensity with white, and just knock these back a couple times. So here's, oh boy. Always during the winter months, January, February, Texas, Austin specifically, it's a cool place to live, I suppose, but man, it's going to get you. So we have this here, and instead, I mean, here's the thing. You could go through here and you could mask this out. Okay, you have X symmetry turned on, and we're going to go ahead and mask this one out here like so. and then we could control tap to invert that mask, control alt tap to clean this mask up, or to sharpen that mask on here. This is what I'm talking about. If you go down here under masking, you know, control tap is to blur, control alt tap is to sharpen. You can control tap to invert. It's all over here in this mask as well. The mask options here. And then you can control tap to invert this, and you can even go in here with move. So just alt tap here with your gizmo to set the direction, just kind of go in here and just kind of move this up. You could inflate, so deformation. On our deformation menu, we were messing around with polish by features. You can inflate the normals. You gotta be careful here because this one's kind of blobbing over the side here. So we're gonna control drag this, and looks like oh, that's just done polypainted. So I'm gonna mask this off. You can go through here and inflate through here. What I actually ended up doing, I think, again, it's been a month, so I don't really remember that well, was I can go down here as well, and I could say, what I'm looking for, thick skin. So if I turn on thick skin, and we crank this thickness up, you're going to see, so here's a very low thick skin number, it just goes out a little bit. Here's a very high thick skin number. I think I kept it around maybe 7.5. So dial in your thick skin, and then if you go through here with like, your standard brush, for example, and we turn off RGB, turn on Z add. If we go through here and we start using our standard brush, you're going to see, you know what, let's do clay buildup. That's going to be an obvious one. It's only going to go to a certain height, and then it's going to cap out. Let's actually do a little bit more, 26 maybe. There we go. So as we're going through and using our standard brush or clay buildup brush, it'll allow us to clay buildup, but then it's going to stop at a certain height. So I think what I did was I went around with thickness turned on and possibly X-symmetry and just kind of dialed in these shapes. And I didn't realize that thick skin's got to be cranked way up. There you go. So you're now going to see it's going to come up, and then it's going to kind of cap itself out. So whatever brush makes sense, maybe the standard brush with a high-end Z intensity, just crank that Z intensity up to kind of go through here. And I'm actually going to turn off my lazy mouse here to kind of go through and, you know, kind of dial in that shape. And this makes it so that we can make that shape. Now, one thing I didn't mention that I probably did was I like to, just for safety's sake, if I go through here and start doing this, I might suggest putting it on a layer or something, but what I'll actually do is I'll say, okay, this dice is basically my underlying perfect corner dice, and I'm going to pull objects away from that, and I want a nice clean separation between them, and I don't want to have to, it's nice to have the option to have these be separate for a while, and then you can always Dynamesh things together later. So what I'll do is I go in here to Subtool, duplicate this entire thing off, and now as I'm going through this one, and we have, again, thick skin turned on, I can keep one of my dice perfect, and then I'm going to pull, and in fact, just to make this obvious, I'm going to turn off the Polypaint for that original one. So as I go through here, let's go ahead and turn on startup material. And let's turn off the Polypaint for this one. Actually, let's make this really obvious, just so we know what we're doing. So this one I duplicated off. I'm going to go into deformation, inflate, and I'm going to do a -0.5 just to kind of shrink it just slightly. So now here's my perfect cube. Here's my cube I'm going to be pulling shapes through. And if I go in here to transparency, you can kind of see through it. So I can, I'm going to go into solo mode. I'm going to go through here and I'm going to use thick skin to kind of pull the shape out. And again, I'm doing this kind of quick and dirty, but you get the idea. And also probably don't have X-symmetry turned on because again, these are pretty unique looking shapes on either side. However, when I turn off solo mode, you're going to see here's my original dice, and then here's my pulled through object. So now if I go through here, I'm going to use my damn standard 02, which you can get from Gumroad. Make my brush size pretty big, and I use this to kind of cut in like the teeth and the features in here. Let's turn off X-symmetry so there's like little worry lines around this. And then for these, if you look closely, it looks like somebody took and somebody probably did, took a clay tool and just kind of, what's it called, like cuneiform or whatever, when you use a clay tablets and you kind of press in the stick to get the particular shape. That's kind of what this looks like. Oh my gosh, hold on. Allergies are the worst. And I'm in year 3 of allergy shots. And I'm telling you, Austin with mold, dust, cedar, it's really the worst. Excuse me. Anyway, so that's the look that's going on there. So to do that, what I would do is come in here with a control. And we're going to mask this out. You know what might be easier? Let's go in here and hold on control. Let's do mask lasso. I'm just going to use mask lasso to kind of put a little triangle in there. Control tap to invert, and be careful when you mask. It'll probably mask through your object, but it seemed to not do that. Hold on. Mask lasso. Oh, on solo mode, it did mask through the object. I just had 2 cubes turned on. So again, mask triangle. Control Alt to get rid of that bottom one. Control tap to invert. Control Alt to maybe clean up or to push this in. Hit W. I'm going to hold down Alt and tap. And we're going to position this right here so we can go through and we can just kind of tilt this geometry in. Like again, we're kind of using an object to kind of push this in a little bit. So there we go. Also, if there's not enough resolution on here, again, Control D to subdivide is fine. And I would just do that. So one more time for this nostril here, Control Alt. Oop. Control Alt to unmask the bottom here. Control tap to invert that. W. Go ahead and tap to find that surface normal. Rotate to kind of do this. And then as you go through, you can kind of tilt this down. Maybe reset this and just kind of push it just a little bit so it looks like it. Somebody went through and went, psh, stabbed it through, and a little heavier on one side than on the other. You can turn off our Polypaint, go into solo mode, and that's pretty far. I hate it. I hate it so much. Oh. Shout out in the comments where I could move where they don't have allergy stuff. Does that exist in the world? So go back in here to turn your Polypaint back on. I'm going to go in here to my clay brush, and you can use thick skin for this, but I don't think I ended up doing it. I'm going to turn off RGB. I think what I ended up doing is just going in with my clay brush and just kind of pushing this down. Another thing you do, hit the comma key, go into brush, go in here to trim hole. And this is actually just a way to kind of go through. This is really cool. So it's actually, if you change your camera, you can trim a hole straight back, or you can hold down Alt, and you can pull a hole straight up towards the camera. Very cool for like concepting hard surface stuff, but you can also use it just to kind of push straight back. So you can use trim hole to kind of do this. But I think what I ended up doing, I just literally just used my clay brush a couple times just to kind of push these back and push this back and push this back. And then, of course, on here, this is my placeholder for just a nice dice. They do have some kind of chewed up edges in here. So what I ended up doing, I think, excuse me, clay brush. And then, you know what? I think even on this one, I ended up going in here to thick skin, turning this, you know, fairly down pretty low. And then if you hold down Alt, you can go through here and you can kind of chew away edges. Let's hit Control D once just to kind of get a little more resolution. And again, we'll turn our thick skin off, turn it back on. If you do change your resolution like I did on the other one too, it's going to make it so your thick skin doesn't really work that well. But kind of go through here and chew up these edges. Of course, you don't need X symmetry turned on. You can turn that off. I'm going to crank up my Z intensity of my clay brush just a little bit. And the thick skin wouldn't be this thick. I think it'd be like maybe, you know, 7.5 or something. Go to this side. There we go, something like this. So I kind of went through here and kind of chewed up my corners a little bit to get that look. Now, I am going to be juggling this here to get these objects pulled through and then pushing in. And then I'm going to be juggling this with my corners. So I think it was just a matter of, on this one, for example, going through and just kind of allowing these corners to kind of show through, and then tapping, Alt tapping this cube in the background and going through and using my clay brush to kind of allow this to show through. Oh, turn my thick skin off. There we go. Man, I might have to stop streaming. Or you know what? I just can't talk anymore. Sorry. And I talk too much. That's part of the problem. So once I'm done juggling these two dice and I'm going through and I'm making sure these shapes are good and these corners are good, then this is kind of what we were talking about earlier. Where like, how do I put a head on a body? Well, you could do it this way too. So two ways you could go about this. You can go in here. I'm going to, it's a good way to do this. So an easy way is I'm going to take this, I'm going to say copy tool. I'm going to select the simple brush. I'm going to say paste tool. So now I've got two identical, I think, cube. Yeah, I have two identical cubes here. So we're going to play around with this one. So we have this one here. So if I go in here to subtool and I literally just say merge down, and that's actually going to maintain our subdivision levels too, which I didn't really care about, but let it do it. So we merge these two into one solid object. I'm going to go in here with our Dynamesh resolution, crank that up, hit Dynamesh. No, I don't want to free subdivision levels, and that'll Dynamesh it at, here's 4 million. It does kind of do some artifacting, which you may have to clean up. Whenever you have objects that are sitting on top of each other, it can kind of get a little bit weird. And you can literally just Dynamesh this into one object. Doesn't have to be that high resolution, I suppose. There we go. So here's 972,000 and it's all one object. But what we were talking about earlier, let's go and delete that, is you can have, here's an object, and it's two separate objects here. We can't store 2 points in history, so we can do project all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say merge visible, and that's going to merge these two and then merge them into one solid object. There we go. So I'm going to go down here to append. I'm just going to grab this merged object here. So this merged object is just these two merged together. Again, I don't need subdivision history. And on this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to Dynamesh this result at a very low resolution just to get an envelope. Again, I don't really care about the quality of it, but I'm just getting a low res envelope here. So what I can do is, you know, we can even turn on X symmetry because I think I kept it pretty symmetrical, but if not, no big deal. I'm going to go down here to ZRemesher, depth size down quite a bit, target polygon count of 5 is fine probably. Hit ZRemesh, and that's going to give me nice even quads. It's going to, I'm going to lose some detail, but it's going to, just like if you're putting a head on a body, you can Dynamesh a duplicate, ZRemesh that result. It'll get you new geometry with less detail. However, you have these objects sitting right here with all the detail that you need. So you can go in here to project. The other cool thing too is on a low res object, you can UV map them pretty easily. Go in here to project all, Control D to subdivide. And I have project all in my custom menu here, Control D to subdivide, project all. And then I'll project your detail back onto this object. If you need to clean it up, might have been easier if I cleaned up a Dynamesh version of this and then did project history. I think it'd work a little bit better. You can go in here to BZP, Z project, and then with this one, these showing and this one selected, you can go through here and let's turn off X symmetry. You can go through and you can push down and hold down Alt to pull up. And what's going on here? Let's see. Those two are visible. So pull up and then push down. You can play also with your projection distance to kind of maybe get this to play a little bit nicer. But that's one way where you could go through and kind of get your details back and kind of do a little bit of cleanup work too. So here, let's go out of solo mode here so we can project this back, clean that up. But anyway, a couple different ways where I was, and again, it didn't feel like when I was doing this that was the best way to go about it. But you know what? I guess we can go look at the final result. while I look at this. But that's how I did the high res. For the game res, all I did was I didn't do anything nice. I didn't go through and like hand rebuild this or use a ZRemesh. I basically went through the decimation master because I'm not going to be bending it. I'm not going to be animating it. So with that in mind, just pre-process current, let it do its thing, and then just dump this down to like, I don't know, 50K. Oops. 50K. Decimate. Oh, there we go. Maybe even lower. 20K. Decimate. Yeah. I think I just decimated it down to something presentable. 10K, maybe even. Maybe even 5K. So I took this and then just did auto UVs and then threw it into here. I think I talked about this last time, where essentially, you know, I got my high res baked down to my auto UV low res, and then I went through here and, gosh, I did more than I thought I did. So here's my red base, and this is just a mottled, here's a fill. Fill layer with just clouds, and then I put a gradient on here to make it kind of darks and light reds kind of broken up a little bit, and then I did an HSL so I can go through here and do a hue shift if I needed to. And on top of this, I did a little bit of a roughness breakup just to kind of break up that surface a little bit, and then dark is basically put in where the dirt is, and then I blurred, and then I did a little bit of paint cleanup, but essentially this is where I could dial in and out the dark kind of dirt collection that's on here. You can see when it's in the recessed areas, it kind of gets a little bit darker around the corners. And then dark painted, as I just went through and maybe painted some stuff up. Color breakup to get some variation between the reds. Edge wear is essentially, I think, just metal edge wear with a little bit of paint cleanup. So here's more edge wear cleanup, more edge wear, less edge wear on those little crusty corners. Light edge wear where it really kind of hits those corners, and then light scratches kind of dialed in, and then void. It's just a black material. So then I can hop into, you know what, I rendered this actually in V-Ray in Maya because I used Maya to do the bouncing dice and then rendered in V-Ray. But if you just need to do a nice render, you can just hop into iRay really quickly and switch out. I don't know. Let me see. Let's go in here to dome, turn off clear color. There you go. So you can kind of see the dice being lit by whatever environment you'd like. Here, let's go back up. Swap this out. Put it on the beach here. So there you go. Okay, give my voice a rest for just a second. Yeah, knife tool was a game changer. Knife tool is a really good one. We use slice just to kind of slice polygroups, but knife is really good for cutting through. Yeah, UV tool ones might get better. That's a good point. Yeah, it'll be interesting. There's a lot of stuff that could happen. There's a lot of stuff that might not happen. Who knows? I don't know anything. How can I change the tools in the quick menu? If you're talking about this, I don't know that you can. I don't know that you have. Someone smarter than me would have to answer that question. But what I do is I just make my own custom menu. Unfortunately, your custom menu is going to be kind of dictated by this type of menu system where it's submenus. And so here's my Pav custom, and then you can have submenus in here, but it is going to be long format. But you could set up several. You could recreate this in a custom menu. I think it might be a little longer rather than wider. Yeah, that'd be pretty easy to kind of go through, make your own custom menu. Then when you hit a hotkey, you basically hold down Control-Alt and tap anything, almost anything in the ZBrush interface, and then assign a hotkey to it. For example, my Pav custom is set to Alt-A. So I'm in here working. It's like a marking menu. Not a marking menu, but you know what I mean. Just quick access. So you could recreate it, I suppose. I'm in Austin, Texas, so Houston might be better at this point just because it's got a little more moisture. I don't know. Then, of course, allergies might be better in places where plants don't grow, like, I don't know, Midland. But it just sucks. It's not that bad. It's just for a while. Yeah, sorry, I had got these Ricola just to keep my throat coated. What is adaptive size for? Good question. So when you do adaptive size, if I wanted to ZRemesh this, I'll go down here to ZRemesh or adaptive size down to 0, gives you, and you can, anything you're ever doing here, if you can just crank it up and crank it down and just see what the differences are. But for adaptive size here down to 0 in ZRemesh, this gives us, what it tries to do is build in even quads at the expense of maybe not capturing in all the detail or surface changes. So you can do Shift S to store that as a little snapshot on your desktop. And then I'm going to undo that, adaptive size up to 100, ZRemesher. Another thing too is, and you're going to see this one built in a lot more edges around any angle changes, so it captures more detail. But, you know, I told it to give me, 4.6 thousand polygons. This one ended up giving me 10 because I had my adaptive size up. So it tries to hit 5, but it's going to give you a lot more because it just needs to build in a lot more edge information. Whereas if you do adaptive size down to 0, it's going to get a lot closer to this target polygon count of 4.6. There we go, 4.469. But again, it's not going to build in those edges. So sometimes it's useful, sometimes it's not, but at least it's there available to you. Beginner class of ZBrush. Yeah, good question. So again, either on my YouTube channel or my ArtStation account, here's intro to ZBrush right here, just 51 videos, kind of an intro to ZBrush here. I'll get you started. If you're brand new to ZBrush, you don't have any clue what I'm doing, hop in there. A couple different intros. I got like 3 info on ArtStation specifically. Look for this nerdy guy. And then here's another intro to ZBrush. If you have access to ArtStation Learning, there's a bunch of videos there. Or my Gumroad page. Good call. Oh, did I miss something? If I missed something, I apologize. My eyes are going. I have allergies. I'm getting old. Somebody may have said something, and I'm not even sure if I have access to everybody, all the different places this is streaming to get their comments. So I apologize. I noticed somebody mentioned the Krang live stream. This one here. So this is making of Krang. So basically ZRemeshing and then using cloth inflate on these polygroups here to kind of get those brainy kind of things. So that live stream is right here, so you can check that out if you would like. Cool. Question. Sure, shout out. I'm fighting with importing UDIMs. Oh, not UDIMs. With a base color displacement. I don't know how much correctly do it. Could you help me? Thank you. UDIMs and ZBrush. Oh, I'd never do that. Anytime I need to do some fancy juggling of UVs, I don't do it in ZBrush. Again, like somebody mentioned, ZBrush UVs might be something that gets improved in ZBrush over time. But as far as like juggling subtools and UVs, the cool thing about ZBrush is it's very cool. It's basically like if I need to UV this, I don't have to go through there and jump through a bunch of hoops. I literally just say, does it have symmetry or not? Does it have polygroups or not? And this might be an instance where we go in here to group by normals. Let's do it in here so you can see it. Polygroups, group by normals. So we have the closed circle, so we can change our max angle down so that it grabs that. But let's try open circle, group by normals, and see with a higher. Yeah, you might have to play with this a little bit more. You know what? That didn't do a terrible job. You know what? I'm gonna work with this. So I'm gonna hold down Control Shift, and you know what? These all here can all be one poly group here. So Control W, and then these. So Control W, so it makes it a little more obvious here and here. Oop. be one poly group, and then these here. And then here's another thing too. You can grab this and then do Control Shift X to expand. Control W. Control Shift X to expand. Control W. Yeah, it's fine. So I have polygroups here, so I'm going to turn on polygroups. I'm going to say unwrap, and then I'm going to say flatten. And then I can hit W, Control tap this one, and like, you know, move this around a little bit. Control tap this one, and then my UVs are done. Is it perfectly controllable? Can I go through here and pack very specifically into UDIMs or anything like that? Not necessarily, but for just quick UV work, which is what ZBrush is about, it's about can an artist use these effectively and still creatively go through with their creative endeavor and create things without having to be like, let me get all technical. ZBrush isn't about that. They may change, or they may introduce things that make it allow it to get more technical in the future. But for now, it's more about quickly and easily unwrapping things, so we can say, you know what, UV master, let's say unflatten. So now we have UVs on here. We can copy the UVs. If I was smart, I would have copy pasted. We would have worked on clone first here, and then we would have done all this. But anyway, now we have UVs on here. So if you wanted to go through and I don't know, go in here to surface noise or something. I'm trying to think. Oh, here's another thing too you could do if you wanted to. I don't know, I guess I do this every time we do UVs, but if I go down here, so I don't have any subdivision on here, so I can do Control D a bunch of times. So now you have subdivision history. We still have our UVs, so we can go over here to UV map. We can morph our UVs, and now you can sculpt on here. So we go in our standard brush, you can go through and you can sculpt with it flattened out. So if it's easier to go through, you know, and sculpt something across a flat object and then morph UV back. Oops, we sculpted on the wrong side. Yep, there we go. So now if it's easier for you to go through and sculpt on a flat object and then morph it back, you can. Or if it's easier for you, this is something we do with the boogeyman guy too. Let me see if I have the ZBrush demo legacy 2021. Nope, 2020, way back. Hit Z and then texture, add this here and shrink this down. Now, of course, you could go just like we were doing earlier. You could go and do this in Substance Painter as well. But if you're in ZBrush, or you needed to 3D print this or something, and you needed to do it on your high res, we could do a Morph UV on here. And then you could, let's hold down Shift and tile this a couple times. Z, standard brush, make sure again under your brush options, you have samples, spotlight projection turned on. So in this instance, let's turn on RGB and Z-add, but I'm gonna leave Z-add at a fairly low intensity. So as we're in RGB at a high intensity, so we can go through. Let me see if this is gonna work. RGB, spotlight projection, Z-add. Ooh, interesting. Do I need to have alpha? No. Huh. Well, let's just do two separate passes. I'm gonna do RGB just to get my color information. And then I'm going to do Z-add just to get my Z information. And then I'm going to do Morph UV. There we go. So now we have, of course, you could tile, since we do have, let me turn this off. So you can sculpt through information if you wanted to, but this might have been better too. You can actually maybe adjust last. I don't think is going to work because that was a Morph UV operation, but you could do a layer and you could dumb this down or before you start sculpting. But like I was saying, because we have UVs now, let's go out of Morph UV. You can go in here to surface noise, and there's a weave in here. So we'll go in here to noise plug. Let's turn on weave, and we do the strength, and we turn off mix basic noise down to 0, and we do plug-in scale down. You're going to see we get that planar projection here. So let's take this from 3D to UV, and now it's going to use our UVs here. So we can go ahead and say okay. and there's this. And then they also have some alphas you can download from the Pixelogic website. So we go in here to noise edit. You can go in here to alpha, and I think I've got some ZBrush 2022 Z alphas cloth. Maybe this one. Let me see if I've got knit pattern wool. So we can dial this in. So now, let me see, turn noise plug off, and then we'll do our alpha scale. There we go. So we got some wool off alpha on here. We can just dial that in a little bit, hit OK. And now we've got tiling wool. For example, how do you work with Dynamesh without losing the resolution of a mesh after it was subdivided? You can duplicate the object off, Dynamesh it, and then project all or project history. Or you can increase the resolution of your Dynamesh, basically. Or you can, it might be, trying to think if there's anything fast. So for instance, I can go in here and I can say, geometry, I'm looking for a noise, apply to mesh. So now we have all this detail on this object, right? And I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say delete other. So we have this object with all this detail. I'm going to duplicate, actually, if I have this object, I'm going to hold down Control and tap, and that's going to store those points in history, and then I can go through here and say, okay, you know what? Let's ZRemesh this, adapt the size down to 0, target polygon count of 5. That's fine. So I'm going to get less geometry, or we were talking about ZRemesh, we're talking about Dynamesh. So we can go through here and we say, okay, I want to Dynamesh this. And we lost a little bit of resolution on there. So if but I have those points stored in history, so I can go in here to project history, which is under your project folder here, and you can project back to get your detail. But you know, you are going to need maybe a little more resolution on your object in order to maintain that. And if you want to, again, you can go back here to project history, and that'll make sure you get all the detail back. But yeah, Dynamesh is about resolution if you want to maintain detail, which if I'm getting into super detail stuff, what I probably am going to end up doing is say, you know what, ZRemesh this object so I don't have to, in fact, let's go even lower, resolution way down. So again, I'm just looking for a rough envelope, and then I'm going to ZRemesh this result to go pretty quick to get nice even quads. And I am going to lose detail, but what I'm looking for is just nice even geometry, maybe even low enough to where I can go through and I can use UV master. If I want to put UVs on here, no problem. And then if I want my details back, project history, Control D to project all, project history, Control D to project all, project history, Control D to project all, project history. So now I have all my details back, and I have subdivision history, which is nice if I wanted to go through here and make, you know, modifications without, you know, just moving the envelope without losing my details. I can do that, as well as if I wanted to UV this, no problem. I can't UV a 20 million polygon Dynamesh, but I can UV a 293,000 polygon mesh with subdivision history. So even if this was, let's hit Control D one more time, 2 million polygons, I could still go through here with subdivision history, Z plugin, UV master, work on clone, go through here. I'm just not even bother with polygroups on here. We just literally just say unwrap and then flatten. It unwraps it for me. It did it. It did it. You can go through here. You can say check seams, and you can see where it kind of just cut seams across here. If you do need to help it out, another thing you can do is you can go through here and you can say Control Shift, select rectangle. You can say U, Control W. Let's do Control W, and then Control Shift tap, Control W, and then on the bottom here, Control W. So now we've got polygroups. So you can just have polygroups unwrap, flatten. Hey, we got this. So then we're going to say copy UVs. We're working on a clone, so we're going to go back to this object with all of its detail and all of its subdivision history, and we're just going to say paste UVs. So now we have subdivision history, we have detail, and we have UVs. How about that? But now you may be thinking, well, I want Dynamesh because I need to be able to do like, you know, BSH Snakehook brush and do something crazy. Do something crazy, do the exact same thing again. Dynamesh an envelope, Subdiv, ZRemesh, project history, and you're good to go. You're back where you started. John says for UDIMs, polygroup each UV to 0 1 object space and hide for each bake. See if that works. Thank you, John. Is there a shortcut key for go to unmatched mesh center? I'm fed up with selecting a subtool. My gizmo is nowhere to be seen. So if your gizmo, yes, there is. If your gizmo is nowhere to be seen, you're like, I just need to go to unmatched mesh center. You can hit W and then just alt tap on your object and then go to unmatched mesh center. Because that's going to take it from wherever it is in space and just apply it to your object and then hit that. There is underneath masking, and I think it's under masking. Yeah, go to unmatched mesh center button. So if you needed to assign that to a hotkey, hold down Control Alt and tap, and then we'll do, I don't know, Alt K. So now if my gizmo is out in space and I don't see it, I can just do Alt K and it'll put it back in here. Or you can just hit that button, put that button in your custom menu. But like I said, if your gizmo is out being weird, just Alt tap on your object and then unmatched mesh center. Cool. UDIMs, auto groups, UVs. Mustafa says ZBrush treats UVs as if they share the same UV tile. Whatever you do with UDIMs, you have to do auto groups, UVs, continue isolating your UDIMs focus. Okay. Excellent. Thanks, everybody. What's the best way to make tires so it's easier to make a low poly for baking later? A single element through a ZRemesh or an IMM brush? Yeah, for the low poly question, if you do an array mesh that takes an object and arrays it around and you need to then turn that, as long as it welds it, it's fine. And as long as you're trying to think of, I thought Joseph Druss, I think, or Paul Gabry did a couple tires like that, or a couple of tires in different ways, where you can basically take a cylinder, and I guess we can try and do it. Cylinder here, make Polymesh 3D. There we go. Let's do a quick group by normals, scale this in a little bit here, and have X symmetry turned on. Oops. Okay, so symmetry turned on. Trying to remember what they did. It was basically like, here's another thing too. If you have this sitting in history, these points, you can hold down Control, tap this point, and then Control tap again to get rid of that. Let's see. So we have this here. We want to do polygroup polyloop here, and then maybe polygroup polyloop this one, and then here, and then we can take this one, Control tap here, and then again, let's go to unmatched mesh center, and we can rotate this around. And then maybe take this one here, and we can rotate this one around. And you can start like cutting in and doing all sorts of crazy Z-modeler stuff to make your tire. In fact, I don't think we even need, I mean, I guess you can keep these in here. We can say, let's do inset, polygroup all, region legacy. I'm just going to pull this in, and then Q mesh polygroup all. I'm just going to push this in here. And then maybe you go in here to like insert multiple edge loops, interactive elevation, and we can kind of pull, insert multiple edge loops, interactive elevation on an edge. Kind of pull this around and kind of round it out. Yeah, and it seemed like they did some fancier stuff. So you could go through and start modeling like that, and then effectively you would have a low res mesh, but again, you're going to have a bunch of stuff cut in. But in reality, what you need is just a cylinder. So I don't know if that's going to help you a whole lot if you did have an array mesh. So basically, if we had a piece of this here, oops, let's do this. Let me think about this. Let's do this. Control Shift. I'm just going to Control Shift with the select lasso to just grab a chunk all the way through. Control Shift drag to invert that. And then maybe get rid of this one. And then maybe get rid of this one. Okay, so we have a chunk of a tire. So we're going to say delete hidden. And we're going to say array mesh this. And you know what? We can give this some thickness maybe. So Q mesh, all polygons here. And I'm going to say flip. That's under your display properties, flip. And we're going to say, what are we going to say? Array mesh. Lock position, lock size, rotate in the X direction, X amount, 360 degrees, and maybe we need to reset that so it goes to the middle of the world. You can see I'm a little bit out of my element here. There we go. And then how many repeats do we want? There we go. So we have kind of a tire going. Let's do 31 repeats, 32. Yeah. And it makes sense because my original cylinder was 32. So now we have a tire with 32 repeats. So now if we go through here, let me say, okay, I'm going to drag over these. We're going to do another inset polygroup all legacy and just kind of pull this in. Actually, equidistant might have worked better, but Q mesh, polygroup all, hold down shift as we pull. And then we'll go through here and we'll grab these and we'll do another inset here. And then we'll say Q mesh here. There we go. So we got a tire kind of going, but now we need to low res this tire. Well, unfortunately, this is just a repeated object. So you'd have to do a little bit of, there's a chance you could, if we turn off array mesh, if you're tricky, you could, let's hold down Alt and let's see if we can't do a quick. Okay, that's going to be yellow. Then Alt, drag across here. So now we have a yellow polygroup here and a yellow polygroup here. So what I'm thinking is there's a chance if you go in here to array mesh and you have those yellow polygroups on either side, if you say make a mesh and you have extrude turned on and close, it'll go ahead and say, it'll weld those together for you. So if we go down here and we say polish by features, nope, let's just do deformation, just polish. Yeah, so it welded it for me. So if you do that and you're very careful and you have the same polygroup on both sides, it'll weld those for you. And then you kind of have a low res, but again, this isn't really low, is it? This is 3,552 polygons. So you can use array mesh. You can have, if you're very careful, you can have it weld for you and you kind of have a low res ready to go. And in this case, I might go through here and do like, let's do a crease tolerance down to maybe 28 and then crease level of 1. Oof. Let's go ahead. Let's go down here. When it welded, it might have done a great job. Let's go down here to geometry. What am I looking for? Oh, my feet are starting to hurt. Geometry, position, initialize. What was I doing? Oh yeah, fix. Mesh integrity, fix mesh. Okay, yeah, so it kind of still has, even when it did that operation, it has some overlapping UVs. I'm going to go through here and do a weld points just to kind of weld anything similar. Do another fix mesh. Okay, so now when I hit D for dynamic, there we go. That cleaned it up for me. So let's say crease level of 2, smooth subdiv of 3, and now we've got kind of our super knobby tire. Kind of an interesting problem over there. I'm going to do a quick mirror across the x-axis. Nope. I'm going to do a mirror and weld to mirror this side over to this side. Shift D. And in fact, I'm going to take all of these. No. Okay, you know what? Let's do this. Uncrease all. Crease PG. Crease PG to crease our polygroups. Nope, see, it's still grabbing those. Uncrease all. Let's go. Okay, I'm going to get this, damn it. We're going to go in here to transform. We're going to turn on radial count in the X direction. And in this, for this radial count, we're going to turn on 32 because that's how many divisions we had. So now if I go through here and I say, okay, turn on dynamic. Okay, fix mesh. Weld points. It's probably more trouble than it's worth. So we have this, and now we have symmetry on here. So I'm going to do Shift D, and I can go through here manually and say, okay, let's crease edge. And I'm going to go through here and manually just kind of, and I don't have to do it a whole bunch because I have radial symmetry turned on. So I can go through here pretty quickly and just crease the edges that I want and leave the edges alone that I don't want. But again, I'm not really answering your question of, so there we go, we can hit D for dynamic and crease these. Oops. We also want, when we do this, we want to have transform symmetry in the X and. No. No. Why is it doing that? X. Oh, I need it in the X direction. Okay, you know what? Go ahead and crease till your heart's content, and then just do a quick mirror and weld. Oops. Do a crease what you want, and then do a geometry deformation mirror across the X, and then mirror weld across the X. And that'll get it on both sides. Yeah, sorry. Shift D. Crease, crease, crease. Maybe crease this corner. Crease this corner. And then hit D again. There you go. So we're starting to develop that. But anyway, long story short, oh, here's another way. Here's another way I like to do a tire. So cylinder here, make Polymesh 3D, and we'll turn off the floor. So if you go to the ZBrush repository, IMM repository, there's a whole bunch of cool stuff you can download. If you do that, if you search for IMM repository tire, you can actually make a tire. You're going to see we have tire 1 and tire 2. It's just an IMM object with a tire tread on it. So if you go through here and you hold down Shift to go in a cylinder, you can dial in an entire tire. And it's just literally just using an IMM brush to repeat this one shape. And you can actually tap, use this shape and then tap to update. It'll give you that tire tread. And then if you want it a little more form-fitting, what do they call low profile tires, drop your Z intensity down, and that'll make it a little closer. Or you can crank your Z intensity up, and that'll make it a little bit fatter. And again, doesn't even have to be conformed to a cylinder. If you wanted to, I don't know, if you wanted to say control, here's a new shape here, and then hold down Shift and put a tire around that direction for some reason. You can tap to get rid of that curve. Go ahead and say split mass points, and now you have a cool looking tire in that shape. Neat. Now, as far as the low res, that's a little tougher. Honestly, what I'd probably do, since tires aren't really that crazy of a shape, just make a cylinder or keep, if I duplicate this off and I go, hey, you know what? Here's the start of my, let's say, group by normals. Isolate this, delete hidden. Let's go through here. Let's turn on, say, insert single edge loop. So here's the start of my low res for my tire. So I'm going to say, let's turn off X symmetry here. Go to unmesh mesh center, or here's the center of my tire. Here is my start of my low res, if I can see it. Yeah, that's about right. And then Q mesh polygroup all here. And then if I needed a little bit more on here, I can say maybe inset polygroup all here, and then Q mesh polygroup all here, and there's my low res, and then bake to that. Be a little more careful, but sorry, now my back's going. Voice, back, eyes, a mess. And again, if I miss anything, I apologize. Sometimes these comes fast. Cool, yeah. Array mesh is fun. Yeah, array mesh tire, and you could much better people at making tires than me can walk you through some of that stuff. I'm using a 2080 Ti right now, but I don't really use it for ZBrush because ZBrush is, unless you're using plugins like Bevel Pro, those aren't really, ZBrush pretty CPU bound, so I'm using the AMD Ryzen Threadripper 3970X. Comes in handy for all sorts of stuff. Subtool position view is 000, link between position subtool and one. The only thing I know about subtools and positioning is the new array, not array mesh. It's under your subtool menu now. So here's the subtool options in here, visibility sets, which are cool. And then also down here you have align and distribute. So you can distribute and align. If you want more information about this, again, ZBrush 2022, what's new, on my ArtStation page. It has 16 videos on that. But also my YouTube channel, ZBrush 2022, what's new. There's some stuff on here. And then here's any new releases on here. As far as like, if I need to, again, I don't really use ZBrush to do like very specific things. It's more of just an art creation tool. So if I needed to do, and you can do it, you can do modular sets in ZBrush, no problem. In fact, if you want to watch a really cool one, see if I can find it for you. Yeah, so they created this Mandalorian ship, and then these modular sets in here that you can create and string together little scenes in ZBrush. So of course you can be very specific. Oops, let me send that along. So check that video out if you want to see more on that. But as far as like we have this, and then I don't know, let's append a cube here. Actually, I just want to append a Polymesh cube regular. So if I've already made a Polymesh 3D and then I go in here and I say, give me a cube 3D primitive, it'll actually convert it to a Polymesh 3D for me. However, I can't find it because there's a bunch of cubes in our scene. There it is, cube 3D. So the cube 3D here, and I have I want to make this face go on this face, or I want to align things. Like I said before, you can use subtool align and subtool distribute, but what I'm probably going to do is I'm just going to go in here to go into my custom menu to a cube or a cube mid, depending on the type of cube I want. And if I want it to stick on this face, then I'll just stick it on this face. If I stick it on this face, or stick it on this face, or if I want to hold down Control and make sure that all these cubes I'm dragging out are sticking to the face and they're the same size, that's how I would go about doing that kind of operation. But but in order for me to say I want this face to go onto this face here, it's actually pretty difficult. I wish it was easy. Hey, maybe that'll be something that gets changed in the future. I'm in Austin, Texas right now. This workshop's about just answering questions right now. Yeah, and I do, one thing I was going to do that came up, it was on my list. That's why I keep a list of like, hey, somebody shouted this out and I figured I'd talk about it. Let's do this really quickly. This might be a fun one for everybody, maybe. I'm gonna do a quick save real quick, just in case I need to get any of this stuff back. So we're gonna go through here and we're gonna do, let's grab a Polymesh, God, I can't find anything anymore because I've changed it all. It doesn't really matter. Grab anything, Ring 3D, Control N, clear our canvas, drag this out on our canvas here. And we're gonna say make Polymesh 3D. And then we're gonna go over here to Z plugin, and there's a text 3D and vector shapes. So you can load in vector shapes like logos and stuff and convert it to 3D. You can also do it with text. So if we do a new text and we call this, oops, don't hit, let's see. Call it ZBrush. It'll give us new text here, and you can change this in all sorts of different ways. So you can say take off adaptive, and that'll give you nice even geometry. You can go through here and you can put on a bevel on this, and you can change the bevel resolution if you want more. You can also turn on the curvature so you get like bubble letters or not, or you can do all this manually too. So if we go here and we say, okay, I like this text here, and I want to go through and let's go down here to geometry, edge loop, and if we hold down control, well, if you had creases on here, you could add bevels, but if you hold down control and we do bevel width, it'll actually add in little bevels for us and give us a new polygroup. And since we've done that, we can hover over an edge and we can spacebar, insert multiple edge loops, interactive elevation, and then you can just pull along here. Thank you. And you can just kind of round this out or shrink this in a little bit. So you can, again, manually go through and add any kind of bendy stuff you want. And you can just, since you've done it for one with those settings, you can go through here and just tap. And that'll update all of these to have those new bevels. Anyway, we have words. And the thing about this is I want this word to go, maybe along a string that's very specific. You can go in here to this and you can say, okay, let's bend curve, and you can say, let's change the resolution. Oops, this is the axis, and then change the resolution here. So you can go through here and you can kind of use this to kind of bend words around here. But you're going to see it's kind of distorting the letters, and also you can go in here to bend arc, and you can say, okay, we want to bend this around, and then we can change the radius here to kind of bring this in or out, depending on what you're trying to do. For a coin, I did that, and this coin right here. So you're going to see this, Pixel Electric ZBrush right along the top here. Do I have a making of this? Oh yeah, I guess I do. Coin. There's the bas relief, and then you're going to see me do some text and kind of bend it in an arc and get it to fit. There we go. So you see kind of bent that to kind of get that to fit. That's how I did that. However, if you wanted to put this along a path and not distort my letters, you can do that too, but it's a little bit tricky because every single one of these letters has a different bounding box. I also did a hell brush a while back where I had an arm that animated over time, and then you could actually drag those arms along a path and it would kind of look like it's animating with, hold on, it's animating along a path, but the only thing you need to do is give these a consistent bounding box. So what's an easy way to do this? Let's go through here. I'm going to do a quick polygroups auto groups. It's going to give me different polygroups or different polygroups for every single letter. This ring I don't need anymore, so I can just delete that out of my scene. And you know what? I like to make sure I'm always Z forward, Y up for everything, so I am. Good. So now I want to move these. You know what? I'm not even sure if I need to move these into space. Let's go down here to split to parts here, and that's going to put every single one of these in a different subtool here. And then I'm going to go through and I'm going to do a bounding box. I'm going to say append a cube 3D, or you know what? Not even a cube 3D. I'm going to append a plane, if I can find the dang thing. Plane 3D. So here's my plane 3D I've appended. I'm going to go down here to, this is a fun trick, geometry, reconstruct, all the way down until it just has nothing, and then delete higher. So now I have a bounding box, and I'm going to use this bounding box for every single letter. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger than each letter and make sure it just kind of fits each letter. So here, does it fit all the letters? Yes. Ooh, barely. Cool. So now we have a bounding box here, and I'm going to give this a little bit of thickness. So Q mesh polygroup all, I'm going to pull this out a little bit. And you know what? I'm going to do this too. Before I pull it out, I'm going to say inset polygroup all each poly and give it a little bit of a border. And I'm going to Control Shift tap just the red and then say delete hidden. And then I'm going to say Q mesh polygroup all. So here we've added a bounding box here. So I'm going to say, with this one selected, I'm going to Control drag here so that B gets one, and then Z gets one, and then U gets one. I hope this works. If it doesn't work, I'm going to waste a lot of people's time, but I think it'll work. And so in my head, it seems like it'll work. So now for these ones, I'm going to do another quick auto group so they get their own polygroups here. And now, you know what, I don't even need to do that. We'll just say split. So I'm going to say split two parts. So now the bounding boxes and the letters are all here. So I'm going to say Alt tap the Z, hold down Shift, bent down arrow, Alt tap the Z bounding box, Shift, bent down arrow, grab the Z, Control E is my hotkey for merge down, and I'm going to do that for all of these. So again, B here, merge down, R here, merge down, U here, Alt tap. I'm just Alt tapping these and then just merging these together. S all the way down, and then grab S and then merge down, and then H here, U here, H, merge down. So now we have all the letters with bounding boxes. So now we need to capture all of these into an IMM brush. So should be pretty easy. Everybody cross your fingers for me. B, create insert multi-mesh. So now you have ZBrush. So now let's go ahead and do a quick save here. And then we're going to go through here. We have a Z sphere, make polymesh 3D. So now we have Z and we have B, and we can do ZBrush. We could even do this. We can go Z and then hold down Control, so that as we cycle through these, it'll keep the same letter Z. However, if we go through here, let's see if I remember where this is. Brush, modifiers, multi-mesh selector, cycle through your meshes. I think if we put it on 1 cycles forward, 2 cycles back, 3 is random. So if we go through here, we go Z, B, R, U, S, H. Look at that. And again, if you want to make them the same size, hold down Control. Z, Z, oop, Z, Z. Okay. Multi-mesh selector set to 1. Does it not do it when I hold down Control? No way. Huh. There's a bug. So if you hold down Control to make it all the same size, multi-mesh selector doesn't work. However, this is really what we were talking about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stretch this out, hold down Control Shift, and we're going to go through here and we're going to slice curve through here. So we want to put the ZBrush text along this path. So we take this and then we say stroke, curve, stroke, curve functions, turn off everything but polygroups. It'll put a line through here. And then now if I go through here and I just tap, oh, we need to make this a curve brush. So we have this is just an IMM brush. So with this one, we're going to say brush, curve, nope, stroke, curve, turn on curve mode for this brush. So now when I tap on here, it's going to repeat the Z over and over again. So here is where I need to go into multi-mesh selects, multi-mesh selectors. Is it under stroke? Where I need to have it follow through curve functions, curve modifiers, curve mode. No, it would be over here. What am I looking for? Because here's where it is. So if I do BI brush insert IMM curve and I hit M, you're going to see there's vine 1, 2, 3, and 4. So if I take vine 1 of 4 and I tap on here, it's actually cycling through here. There we go. Variation selector, cycle forward, backwards, and random. So that's what I'm looking for. 0 and then 3 multi-mesh select starts it. And this selector starts at 26 because if I hit M, this is number 26 out of all these. So 26, 27, 28, 29, and it cycles through 4. So variation, it starts at 26, cycles through 4 variations of the mesh, and then it's set to random. So we need to steal some of that information. So here, undo that, hit B, go back to our ZBrush here. So multi-mesh select is set to 0, variations 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think maybe set this to 6. I don't know that I actually need to change this, but just in case. Selection, we're going to cycle through forward and then put this back to 0. So now when I tap here, ZBrush, oh, you know what? Okay, this actually worked. However, when I captured this, I need to capture it like this because ZBrush is looking for bottom to top. So it goes bottom to top. So when I capture this multi-mesh brush, we need to go brush, create insert multi-mesh. So now the letters are facing that way. Now when I go back here and we set this up, so we go variations of 6, cycle forward, starts at 0, oops, variations of 6, cycle forward, tap, tap, oh, stupid, stroke, curve mode on, variations of 6, cycle forward, tap, there we go. Uh-oh, ZRemesh, ZH, we have X symmetry turned off, right? Yeah. Here, let me think. ZBrush, it's all in the right order. ZHSUR brush. Is it going backwards? ZRemesh select, hold on. Okay, let me turn that down. 3, 2, 1. U6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Maybe it should be 5. Well, I got it close. Let me think. And you know what? Now that I think about this, Paul Gabry might have something on this that actually works. I might be missing something. ZRemesh. Oh, close. No H. So maybe 6. Maybe 7? Heck, I don't even know at this point. ZBrush. Oh, it's just backwards. ZBrush backwards. Oh man. Do I need to? Okay, you know what? I'm gone too far. So instead of doing it this way, let's do it this way. So dumb. And then we'll go back here. And again, all you need to do is curve mode turned on, starting with this one, variations of 6 selections cycle through. So it's not difficult to set up. It's just, yay, there we go. ZBrush. Okay, so capture it. I don't know what I did. Capture it that way that I showed you. Curve mode, these, and now we have ZBrush spelled out. ZBrush. How about that? Okay, so we're going to tap. Oh, so if you need to make it bigger, just make your draw size bigger and then tap to update. Here, if you want to space them out more, you can go in here, I think, to, this would be under your brush settings here. So brush, curve res, nope. What am I looking for here? Maybe it's under stroke actually. Stroke, curve step. So you can crank that curve step up. So when you tap, it'll space them out, or you can overlap them if you make them a little smaller. There we go, closer together. You know what? I guess we'll keep curve step of 1. So now we have ZBrush. We're going to tap off. We're going to say split mask points. It's under your split menu, and the bounding box, what's keeping these all fairly regular. So now these are all separate subtools. So we want to get rid of the bounding boxes. Just go through here, ZBrush, Control Shift Drag, delete hidden, and then if you want to, you can say maybe go in here to auto groups and say, you know what, ZBrush, we'll skip one, and then ZBrush, delete hidden. So now we have those on there, and now you have a ZBrush brush. So if we like this, this is also curve mode, so let's turn off transparency. You can go through here and you can just literally just drag out ZBrush over and over and over again. And if we like this brush, we can go in here to, let's see, brush, tap select icon. That'll grab whatever's on your document if that looks good to you. If not, change it. And then we're going to go in here to brush, save as. I'm going to save this into our ZBrush 2022, ZBrushes _ IMM, and we'll call this the, hold on, I got a coffee here, ZBrush text. Whew. Was that worth it? Yes, yes it was. Cool, John. Yes, I'll be here live on Thursday as my next live stream. It'll be on my channel though, so I'm on Pixelogic's channel right now, and we'll do my channel on Thursday. Can't open Bevel Pro. Get a welcome page. Let me think. I can try. So, for instance, we have a cylinder here. We go down here to initialize, and we knock this. Wow, what am I looking for here? Not inner radius. Not H divide. Oh, you know what? It wasn't this one. It was the rounded sphere ender, and then on this one we have coverage. There we go. So we can take this coverage down, and we can say, okay, go ahead and make Polymesh 3D. I'm going to do a quick group by normals here, and you know what? Let's do a quick crease PG, Control D to subdivide to smooth this out, and then I'm going to go in here immediately and just do a Dynamesh. So now I've got a Dynamesh object, but I want to put a bevel along this Dynamesh object here. And in fact, you know what? Let's Dynamesh at a slightly higher resolution so it's not so ratty. There we go. So still plenty ratty along the edges there, but now what we can do is we can go into Z plugin. And again, this is just a, you know, you could go in here to your trim dynamic and try and like sculpt in a bevel along here, but it's going to be kind of tough to do on a Dynamesh object. So Z plugin, Bevel Pro. Okay, so here's our Bevel Pro here, and works on my machine. I hate to say that, but again, I'm using 2080 Ti. I'm not sure if your graphics card is different. You can also put in a ticket on the Pixelogic website. You can submit a ticket and they can check it out for you. The first thing we need to do is fix our edges possibly to get rid of any nasty math in here. And then I'm also going to need to polish these, because if you look at the poly groups that Dynamesh gives you, it's very alias and it's just literally doing what you tell it to. So I'm going to go ahead and polish those poly groups a little bit to get smooth those out. And that's basically what we did earlier, where we have two poly groups and we just run a polish by features. Is essentially what this is doing. So I'm going to do a little bit more polish here just to straighten those out, straighten those poly groups out. And so we have preview edges turned on, so if I turn that off, and let's do auto apply so we can see the result. So this is the result we're getting. It's not quite cutting through here, so we need to change our mesh offset amount from 0.5 to maybe 0.55, just to kind of, it's basically giving me more geometry to dial in. There you go. So now you've got bevels along here. If we want to change the bevel amount to maybe like 0.6, you can turn that there. So now if I go out of here, if I hit OK with auto apply turned on, it's just going to slice this off. If I turn this off, it's going to, if I hit OK, it's going to turn on live Boolean for me, and it's going to give me two objects, one for the interior and one for the exterior, to go ahead and slice through. It looks like my bevel offset amount wasn't just quite enough, so I'm going to say delete that, delete that. I'm going to hop back into Bevel Pro. I'm going to change that offset amount just a bit. Again, polish by groups. There we go. And then that bevel mesh offset amount, maybe like 0.65. And again, if you hit auto apply, you know, we'll just hit OK, and that'll go through, and it basically applies those Boolean shapes that I showed you. So now we have our Dynamesh object with bevels cut out. So if you wanted to, you know, Dynamesh this again, you certainly could with those bevels built in here. And then if you wanted to, you can go in here with like H polish, and you could polish around this corner and polish around this corner, and there we go. So we're using Dynamesh and kind of, you know, like I said, Dynamesh meshes, but still being able to get but I'm not sure. Yeah, put in a ticket. Let me scroll way up here. Cool. Delete all the interior faces of a body, maybe hiding before 3D printing. I don't think my workflow, that is the best. I think one thing you can do is you can go in here and you can do a hit W, hit the gear icon, and you can do a remesh. Not a remesh. It's a. It'll just run a Boolean operation. Why can't I find it? Oh, remesh by union. That'll go through and basically run a Boolean operation on everything in your scene that's touching and visible. That might be a way to clear things out. We can also say we can append a cube 3D and then take this cube, scale it up just a bit, and then we'll go in here to live Boolean, and you can say, turn this to subtractive, hit W, and then as you're pushing this through, you can search for any interior hidden cavities in here. But I think remesh by union might get rid of any interior spaces. You can also dynamesh. I think dynamesh should too. I'm not really sure. Oh, update the original and link subtool. Yeah. Yeah. Go to. You're looking for. God, what one was that? That was the ZBrush 2021.5. I think. Okay, YouTube. It's going to be called Subtool. It's symmetry. It's trying to remember what it was called. There we go. Instant subtool is what you're looking for, I think. So you can basically, if you want to have an object and then put it somewhere else and then still sculpt across a midline, you can use that. You can also use this. You can use the stager to kind of flip back and forth between world center 0, 0, 0 and a different position. But that first one, this is uses nano mesh to do that. Fast create tool. Oh, here, you know what? Here's the macro. This one here, the one with the macro, is actually a little bit easier too. Sorry, I'm spamming you guys with links, but yeah, we got it. Cool, Marco. Thanks for. Glad the videos are helping. Thank you, Gary. Possible to disable the pop-up each time you switch between masking and select tools. So we're masking, and then we're switching between masking and then the control shift, and then we're selecting. Let me see. So we're masking, and then we're selecting pop-ups each time you switch between masking and selection tools. Control shift. So we're selecting tools, and then control masking. I'm not getting a pop-up. What pop-up specifically? The only pop-up that kind of throws me off is this right click. So if I'm ever doing right click navigation and I'm in here and I'm navigating around and then I'll accidentally get this menu, that's under preferences. Gosh, where is it? Config? No, interface. Yeah, interface, navigation, enable right click pop up. I'll turn that off, and then I'll do a config, store config. I'm actually kind of surprised that's not turned on. But that way I don't accidentally get that, because I never use that right click menu. So that way I can go through here and use right click navigation without that pop up happening. But as far as the pop up, I'm not sure. Oh, the warning that says until restart. Oh, you know what? That's come up before. I don't know that there's a good answer for that. Maybe there's some bug in the back of my brain where maybe they added a preference for that, or maybe that was just somebody suggesting that they add a preference for, hey, stop giving me pop-ups, you know, as I switch between things. But I think it is every time you start ZBrush, you just got to hit, don't remind me till next time I open ZBrush. Wish I had a better answer for you. ZBrush textures to Maya. You can, what I would probably do is bake it. So basically, if you have an object here and you have texture information, or in this case, Polypaint information, you can have a low res, you can have a high res, you can export this high res, and then it'll bake vertex color. You just have to make sure in your baking options that you have vertex color turned on, then you can bake that vertex color. If you want to do this, the depth is down to 0, target polygon count of 5, and you have UVs, it's pretty easy. You can actually bake in ZBrush, especially Polypaint. Just a simple transfer. Of course, you have to have UVs for that. So we have here's our object here. We're going to go into UV master. We're going to say unwrap so that we have UVs on it. And then let's go, you know what, let's go back in history to before we did anything, because we need to get our, let me see here. So here's our high res with our color information, control tap. Here's our ZRemesh with our UVs on it. So if I do flatten, yep. So now if I do control D, project history, always yes, control D, project history, control D, project history. Now we have our color and height information back, and we have UVs. So if I go down here and I want to take this, color information into a texture map. So UV map is going to control how big it is. It's 2048. That's fine. Texture map, we're going to say create new from Polypaint, and now we have our Polypaint transferred here. So we're going to say clone texture. Go in here to texture. Make sure you do flip vertically, I think, and then export, and that'll go ahead and export this texture that you can apply to your low-res mesh where the UVs are to get that information back. Also, under Z plugin, you do have, what else do you have in here? Multi-map exporter. So you can say, here's your export options. You can say export your displacement, vector displacement, normal, ambient occlusion, texture, cavity, and your mesh from here. But honestly, 99.999% of the time, I just bake out my vertex colors in my baker. How I can create a crescent with repeating not deformed elements like Alphonse Mucha's Art Nouveau crescent. Let me see if I can find a good example of that. Yeah, like this, and then it kind of gets smaller and smaller. Well, you can use this as an alpha, and then you can convert that to geo. Yeah, because what's going to happen is on an IMM brush, you know what? You can maybe use a ZRemesh for this. It would be, boy, that's interesting. Because you could use a ZRemesh to scale over time, and that would keep them stuck together. Because if you do an IMM brush, that's going to, as they get smaller, it's going to space them apart. And we're talking if you want, yeah. You know what you could do is maybe you could use nano mesh and ZRemesher to maybe, okay, let's try that. How much time we got? Okay, we got 2 minutes. Here we go. Out of edit mode. Control N to clear a canvas. We're going to go in here to, is circle good enough? I think circle's good enough. Oh, crash. Don't choose circle. We've been taxing ZBrush. I'll give it that one. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a circle or a cylinder, I guess it doesn't really matter, and we're going to say here, edit, make polymesh 3D. Let's look at this one here. So we have this. So if I do Control D to subdivide, geometry, delete lower, what I'm looking for is basically insert single edge loop, hold down Alt. So we have evenly spaced here. Let's do polygroup, poly loop. So we just need this outer loop here. Delete hidden, and in fact, let's do a slide edge loop complete here if I can. Or is it gonna let me? Oh, it only lets me go in. Can I go out? No. All right, let's do mask edge loop complete here. Control tap to invert that, and we're just gonna literally scale in, hold down Alt, and we'll scale in this way. So, you know, I'm just gonna move down. So now we have large to small. I'm going to turn on X symmetry on here, and I'm going to ZRemesh this half at depth down to 0. Okay, good. Okay, we're getting somewhere. So now here we're going to say insert single edge loop, pull down Alt. So I want these to be big, and then as it goes down here, I want them to get smaller and smaller. Something like this. So now if I want to put now I want to put a circle or a cylinder at the middle of all of these. So I'm going to take my cylinder. What kind of cylinder I want? I want a cylinder here that I want to have initialized at maybe 12. And you know what? On the side here, nothing. Make Polymesh 3D, hit W, scale this in. So I'm going to put a little cylinder here, and you know what? Maybe I do want it to be kind of a thick cylinder, so we're going to say inset flat island legacy here, and then tap, and then Q mesh polygroup all, pull that through, insert single edge loop. So we have a circle. B, create insert mesh new. Back to our moon here. F, see it. So now we have an insert mesh brush. However, we want to convert this. We're going to say brush create nano mesh brush. So now it'll create a circle, and I want to hover over it. So hold down, hover over face, spacebar, insert nano mesh, polygroup all, and I'm going to put a circle on all of these, and then I'm going to go down here to my nano mesh, and we're going to say fit, fill, fit, proportional. Proportional keeps it the same, but then it clips. I do want to keep it round, but I do want them to, so yeah, it's getting bigger to smaller, but then it starts squishing. Can I do proportional? Can I do fill so that they're touching? But I wanted to go from stay circle. Oh, you know what? I might not be able to. You know what I could do? I could eyeball it. I could go, okay, because essentially what it's looking for, I think, is I need it. Damn. Proportional. I need it to be proportional. Oh, okay, wait. Can I do... You know what? Close but no cigar. Let me think about that. Because I wanted to have one circle for each face, but I do want those faces to touch. So if I do one, however, proportional will keep it circle, but they don't get smaller. It's just going to be one for each, and then as it gets down here, it's kind of... You could do maybe an array mesh. Okay, so let's say this is kind of what we ended up with. I'm going to go down here to inventory, one to mesh. So then we could take this one here, we could say split hidden, and in fact, we could go in here and duplicate this off so I can keep this one around. I'm going to say inset, you know, we could just do this. Q mesh, polygroup all, we're going to pull this out, and then we're going to say Q mesh this, and then we're going to say Q mesh polygroup island, push this back, and then move this on back. So, so didn't work. However, if we have this here, and we have our brush here, I'm going to do a quick mirror and weld. I might have to play around with this one. Insert single edge loop. Let's do multiple edge loops. Specified in elevation. Just put one right down the middle here. So we have a circle. And we split mask points. And we say array mesh And then we say lock position, lock size. I'm going to use transpose, my transpose line. I didn't mean to hit save. Come on. Catch up. There we go. Transpose, hit W, hit Y, and then I'm going to move this down. So basically I'm going to repeat a bunch. I don't know how much yet. And I'm going to do my rotations in the Z axis. Z amount 360 degrees. And my pivot, let's just use this. So I have this here. Give me my pivot. Okay. So here, and then, oops. Rotate Z amount 360. There we go. And then our repeats. So we have more repeats. However, I want to introduce a scale along here. So I'm going to go to scale. And I want it to scale over time, but get smaller down here. Someone smarter at me than ZRemesh would have to do that one, but it also seems to be separating out. If you do IMM, it's also going to space them out. Man, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. You stumped me. We got close, but no cigar. Why do we need to make a normal object in normal world? That's marmoset. How does it work? Normal world map, your tangent normal, your object, well, tangent normal is just basically, so you have a body and then it has details on that body and it's going to use the normal of the object to dictate how do I explain this? There's smarter people than me that have information on this, but basically your world is the world you live in, your entire scene has an X, Y, and Z world axis. And then your object has relative axis, like, so your arm could be, the Y could be pointing out this way. So basically your tangent space normal is using your object and then giving you kind of a bump effect based on what your faces of your object are doing, like your arm. The world space normal map is looking at the world position, so it's the world X, Y, and Z. So you can use your tangent normal is good for giving you detail on an object, and then your world normal is useful for, like, if you wanted to, like, do sun bleach on an object that's standing there. That's just the world position, so all of the Y direction of that world position. I guess it's easier to actually show you. You guys got, I don't know if somebody's coming on anytime soon, but let me show you in here a little bit easier. Let's see if I got anything cool in here. Recent, Commander, skateboard. You know what? Let's load up. This one's fine. So for instance, like this burlappy sack type thing, this is actually just done in the texture here. So you can see just tiling. So if I ever needed to come in here and be like, oh, the height is too much, I can just dumb it down in the texture as opposed to having to do it. And now if you wanted to 3D print this, you'd be kind of SOL. You'd have to reverse engineer it back. Anyway, world information. So if I have a dirt map, and in fact, let's just do this. I'm going to say remove mask here. So we have dirt on this object. I'm going to say add a black mask. So now the dirt, if I alt tap on here, the dirt isn't going anywhere. However, I can go in here and I can say add a generator. And on this generator here, we can say give me a dirt generator. And then now I can go through here with this dirt level, and it's going to, wherever my AO is, if we scroll down here, you see it's bringing in your world space, your position, ambient occlusion, and curvature. All of these are being used to generate a dirt map based on those maps. So I hit M, you're going to see I can dial in and out my dirt based on those parameters. However, if I go through here and I do let's do add a generator. Is it under generators? Light, or even we can do position. So here, if I alt tap on here, you're going to see I'm getting kind of this effect. So it's using my position gradient and my world space normals. You know what? I think it's even cooler if I use light. Add a generator. And this generator here, we're going to use light. And it's going to look like a light is shining on my object, but what it's really doing is using my world space and my position to grab channels from there. So is this a better way to explain this? I'm going to do a quick fill layer. I'm going to go in here to my texture. So here's my AO texture. Here's my color map that I'm really looking for. So here's my position map. So if I drag this onto the color map here, you're going to see it's basically, it goes from green to like kind of red purple. So basically it can convert this to a grayscale map, and the higher your position is, and it's, again, it's just like your position map that was baked. So if I hover over this, is it going to show it to me? If I hover over this, there we go. As it bakes this position map out, it's kind of going from a top-down gradient. So if you wanted to use your position map to kind of go, hey, I want to do sun damage from the top down, you can use your position map to very quickly go, hey, just put in a little gradient from the top down of my object. Another way to kind of do this, a similar thing, is use your world space. So if I put in my world space map here, there we go. So if I look at it from the top here, you're going to see it looks very orange. If I look at it from the bottom here, it looks very purple. If I look at it from the left and I look at it from the right, it kind of changes colors. It basically takes the entire world and projects a color from every position. So between those two maps, to get rid of this, you can use that to do some really cool stuff, like underneath dirt here, and we have light. So if we alt tap this, we can see the mask it's creating. I can literally use those two maps to go, let's see, check light, to go through here and change a position, quote unquote, of a light. So here's the vertical angle and horizontal angle. So if I wanted to be like, I want him to be like he's standing there, and I want to do, let's go ahead and hit invert. He has dust just falling on him from top down. I can use this world and position map to kind of give me, let's invert that, to kind of go through here and say, okay. And again, if you took your world map and you look down, it was all the same color. All it does is make a channel, or it makes a mask based on that top-down color. And it looks like you're getting a light shining down, but really it's just taking those map information and giving you all the top surfaces of that object. So now if I hit M here, you're going to see, okay, now as let me go in here to the HSL, and I'm going to make this really obvious. I'm going to make it green. So this is dirt on here, but that dirt is being controlled by this light, which is really just taking that world map information and going, hey, all the purple or all the blue, give me a mask, and it's going to hit all those top-down surfaces. So now it looks like dirt's kind of spilling on here. Another cool thing you can kind of do in here is we can go in here to dirt, add a black mask, and you can usually literally use physics. To kind of bounce around. Let's go to brush here, go into our rain brush. So now if I alt tap here and I just click on our scene, it's going to rain in our scene particles, and then wherever it hits our object and kind of scrolls down, if I hit M, you're going to see that's what it's doing, is it's kind of going through and exposing in that direction as it's raining particles on it. And then again, you can go in here non-destructively, and you can be like, hey, I want to make this look, you know, a different color, or I want it to kind of go in here and kind of extrude out, or kind of acid etch in, and it'll do that. But anyway, long bad explanation for world and position maps. Cool. Have any advice for new ZBrush users? Stick with it. If anything, for me, it's whenever I'm teaching somebody ZBrush, the people who have the easiest time learning ZBrush are people who have no idea what 3D is and barely know what a computer is. Those people I can teach ZBrush in 15 minutes, and they'll pick it up, and next thing you know, like 30 minutes later, they're already sculpting little heads, and they had no preconceived notion about like how things should work. The people I have a hardest time teaching ZBrush are people who have been using ZBrush, or people who have been doing 3D for 30 years, and they've been, I use 3D Studio Max for 30 years, and I do architectural design, and I want to use ZBrush. And then you get over that initial hurdle, and again, if you want links to, what's an easy one? Look for that weirdo looking dude here. This guy, this Conan O'Brien kind of guy. This was just a weird thing I was creating while I was making the series. I don't know why he looks the way he does, but the biggest hurdle you're going to have for those people are there's no outliner in here. It's subtools and tools versus objects in the object space. And if you want to add a light, it's like it's a thing on a sphere. Materials are kind of stuck in here, so it's very weird. But if you can get over that initial weird hurdle, it doesn't, I wouldn't necessarily go as far as to say, oh, it makes perfect sense. Certainly there's arguments to be made for some things that don't make a lot of sense, but at the same time, it's really built around creating something on your screen. So if you can, and also another thing is getting rid of the idea that you have to be super duper precise. You don't, certainly there's precision if you're modeling something for NASA and people's lives depend on it. Maybe don't use ZBrush for that, but you can get incredible amounts of precision in ZBrush. You can create jewelry that with microns in ZBrush. It's totally doable. It's just if you're expecting to use ZBrush as an architectural previs solution for snapping things and modular sets, you're probably going to get frustrated. But again, after you use ZBrush for a long time, you start to realize the precision that you think you need, you probably don't need. So letting go of precision a little bit and leaning into creation, as well as getting over that initial hurdle of what's a subtool and what does that mean when I go at it? What is edit mode? That's weird. And why is it doing this? If you can get over this, which is like the first 3 or 4 videos in that series, if you can get over this, it's all downhill. It's all easy. Yeah, the polygon might need to be square, and you'd have to, you know what you could do for this is, now that I'm thinking about it, I wonder if you were to create this using nanomesh first and get, oh boy, that's a tough one. Hey Tom, how's it going? Let me see, sorry, I'm trying to catch up. Top 5 most used features in the past couple of big updates of ZBrush. Oh man, what were the, again, these things all kind of run together for me, so let me give myself a reminder. Here, probably the updated knife brush and Bevel Pro. There's been so many. ZBrush 2021.7 was another update. Stager I use sometimes. Knife brush I use a lot. Stroke interpolate I'd probably use more if I was more of a creator. Mask AO. Mask AO I've used a couple times on my live streams. Snake Curve, this 2021.6 was another update. Yep, this one. What was in here? God, I don't remember. So I do use extrude profile brushes for hair and stuff, for like stylized hair. I don't use a ton of the, it's cool, but I don't use a ton of the mask mesh stuff. I don't create that quickly. I tend to be a little bit more controlled, and that's a little bit more freeform. Not a bad thing. It's just, I tend to be a little more stodgy. I could probably, you know what? I could probably loosen up a little bit. Like Jonas. Pretty loose concept sculptor for, oh yeah, knife curve with radius. Excellent call out. But yeah. Love from India. Thanks for showing up. Aspects ratio of each phase is causing issues. Yeah, that's a tough one, man. If anybody figures that out, drop me a line. Yeah, I wonder if you, oh, okay, just real quick. I hope no one's trying to come on after me. Let's do this. Insert single edge loop here, and I'm going to do a quick geometry split. No. Geometry, modify topology. What am I looking for? Geometry, modify topology. I'm going to do unweld all, and then go back to our brush. Nope. Go back to our Z modeler brush. Insert nanomesh polygroup all. No, this isn't going to work. Damn. Because if I was hoping that if I unwelded them, I could get it to ignore. Poke each face and bevel the center vertex. Let's give that a shot. So here, if we go into, boy, do I remember how to do this? It's called split poly. Nope. It's called, what's it called, everybody? Spin split. I thought it was. Oh, I saw Chi Vang do this, and I don't use it very much, obviously, and I can't remember what it's called. Insert point. There we go. So insert point on all of these. And then, let's see, split point. Let's see if we can do a split ring. Or do we have to do a split point first? Oof. Yeah, okay, so split point and then split ring. Yeah. Okay, wait. Split point, I wonder. Here, and then if I keep these all the same, it's gonna get bigger and bigger and bigger. Is there a way to use this information? These are all, but they're all, so you have a center point for every one. Here, can you use that information? I wonder if Houdini could do that pretty easily. Let's see. Yeah, interpolate with a circle brush. You could use interpolate to get smaller to larger and then mirror. Maybe will interpolate work in a curve. That might be a little bit more brute forcey, but that could work. Starting with H. I think going to ZBrush folders and make it work like it used to again. Oh, I think I missed one. Pre-drag, base mesh, split off. It used to be BH goes to H polish, but now there are more brushes starting with H. Let me see. So BH. There's more. You know what you could do? I'm not sure if this is possible, but underneath your ZBrush 2020, ZBrush Data 2022 Z Startup, there is your hotkeys in here. And in here it tells you what the pop-up are, pop-up S, pop-up H. But I have my H polish set to Alt H, so I don't run into that problem. So I just do Alt H and it goes to H polish. But yeah, BH, have it go to polish by default. I wonder if you could set this to BH because hatch A is A. I mean, if you don't use the hatch brushes, you do use history recall though. You could delete those out of your startup, but ooh, that gets a little bit scary. BHP, yeah. Array Boolean might work. Bevel center vertex, is it? Can you bevel? I don't know why I'm so intent on that. Yeah, that's a tough one, man. Skyrim, but they use object normals characters only. Skin muscle pass and tangent normals for now. Oh, interesting. Cool. Preferred software creating hard surface objects. ZBrush is my preferred, but you know, if I need to supplement ZBrush with Fusion 360 or again Max Maya Modal Blender, I'll certainly do that. But for just creating, ZBrush. Cool, thank you, EJ. Yeah, don't give up. Yeah, keep going. Cool, ZBrush Cinema 4D. Thoughts on it? Yes, possibly. Again, things could not change, things could get better, things could get worse. Those are our three options. We'll just have to stick around. Cool. Symmetrical circle, turn perspective or something, capture the alpha. Yeah, I mean, again, since we have the alpha here, if you wanted to just take this and then convert that to geo or just mask, kind of like we did with the Pizza Hut sign, you could do that, but it's not like geometry. So that's a weird math problem. I don't know. But anyway, thanks everybody. Thanks everybody. I'll see you Thursday on my channel if you want to show up for that. If not, have a good rest of your month. See y'all later. Yeah, you can ZRemesh. You could, like Jonas is saying, lock position, lock size, reset, so that's a down. Oh, you could also maybe do even an X mirror. So you're just going from large to small and then mirroring that result. Okay, damn. Now I got to do that. So we have this here. I'm going to say, because I only really need a half circle, but I'm not really good at array mesh. I wonder if they have an array mesh in here that does that. Array, heck, a half circle around. No. Array mesh, lock position, lock side trans. I don't need that many. And in fact, I don't even need to do, okay, so the rotation doesn't need to be 360 actually. It just needs to be 180. Maybe a little bit more. So here's another example. If you tap on here and then you do left to right, you can get a little more fine-tuned. So we have half, and then we want to go from bigger to smaller. X, Y, and Z amount. Can I just do W scale E? Because I do want it to get smaller, but I also want it to be a full half circle. And then basically you go in here and you could say append new and then mirror across the X. And then that would give you the X mirror. But you would just have to get this to go from larger to smaller with array mesh, which I'm not positive I can do. Rotate. Oh yeah, I have transpose turned on, sorry. W, E, scale. You can move the pivot around. Stage 1, scale. Scale amount. Oh, no. Yeah, it's going to scale in that direction. I don't know. I give up. Cool. I don't know if I'm going to figure that one out. But anyway, thanks everybody. And catch you on the flip side.